Starting off hour number 2 of this Football Friday here live on the morning after on Sports Grid, we're going to talk some baseball because we haven't yet. Welcome back to the morning after here, live on Sports Grid, all across the Spiz Grizz network, and I am Ben Stevens. Because although we are geeked up for the start of a college football season and the final week of the NFL preseason, because that means real regular season NFL action is just about 2 weeks away, it's still the hunt for October in Major League Baseball. And yesterday, we saw something up in Queens we haven't seen all season long. Jacob deGrom was on the bump for the New York Mets. We've seen that a few times now. He's made 5 starts now this season. But what we have seen was a minus 450 favored spread for the New York Mets. Yes, Jacob deGrom and the Amazons were minus 450 at home on that money line against the Colorado Rockies. And the Mets did cash on that number, beating the Rockies 3-1 because deGrom Day was dominance once again for one of the best pitchers in all of the sport. 6 innings of work for Jacob deGrom, only allowing 1 earned run on just 3 hits against Colorado, striking out 9. Only threw 87 pitches. He is 3-1 this season with a 2.15 ERA. So the Mets make good on that minus 450 favored number. They cover on a run line of 1.5. That was minus 182 of juice early yesterday. And the Mets extend their lead to 2 games in the National League East. Pete Alonso, a big reason that Jacob deGrom was able to get that 3rd win of the year. A 2-run blast in the bottom of the 3rd. The Mets scored all 3 of their runs in the home half of that 3rd inning. So the Mets were a minus 450 favorite at home against the Rockies yesterday. Their divisional opponent in the Philadelphia Phillies, a minus 375 home favorite yesterday in Philly against the Cincinnati Reds. And the Phillies make good on that minus 375 ticket as well, winning 4-0. A shutout because of Aaron Nola. A complete game shutout. 9 innings of work, of course. No earned runs allowed. Only 5 hits against the Reds. 11 strikeouts and a complete game shutout with 11 Ks. Aaron Nola only needed 101 pitches. Incredibly impressive on the bump yesterday in the city of brotherly love. The second career 9-inning complete game shutout for Aaron Nola, and the Phils sweep the Reds in this 4-game set. Philadelphia now has won 5 of its last 6 games. So as we look at the National League East odds based on those standings, like we mentioned, New York extends its lead over Atlanta to 2 games. The Braves off yesterday. A tough weekend set for Atlanta begins in St. Louis against the Cardinals this weekend. So the Mets a 2-game advantage. Their odds to win the division working more in their favor, minus 410 from a minus 280 price just yesterday. The Braves, the second best odds, plus 320. Philly is 9.5 games out of that top spot in the National League East. That's why their odds to win this division are so long. But the Phils are firmly in that wild card hunt in the National League. The second spot in the NL wild card standings, 2.5 games up over the San Diego Padres for that second wild card spot. The Braves have a 10-game lead for that top spot in the National League wild card standing. So although the Phillies have long odds to win the East, I think we will see 3 teams from the National League East in the NL postseason picture. Hey, welcome to our Sports Grid radio audience here. The second hour of a Football Friday with a slight focus on Major League Baseball as well, underway here on TMA. Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our terrestrial radio affiliates now in the fold as well. I am Ben Stevens. Those are the odds to win the National League East. The New York Mets, the heavy favorites once again. A 2-game lead over Atlanta, minus 410 in that pricing. As we go to the American League now, 2 postseason contenders facing off against each other in the Pacific Northwest yesterday. The Mariners holding off the Guardians for a 3-1 victory, and all 4 runs were scored in the first inning of the game. Cleveland scored 1 run in the top of the first. Seattle responds in the bottom half of the frame with a Mitch Haniger 3-run blast, his 7th this season, and that was it. That was all the scoring we saw. That was all we needed. 3-1, the victory for the M's. Scoreless baseball, the final 8 innings of that baseball game. So now Seattle, a 2.5 game advantage, up over the Baltimore Orioles for that third and final American League wildcard spot. And despite the loss yesterday for the Guardians, the Cleveland still holds a 4-game lead in the American League Central, minus 190, that favored price for Cleveland in that division. And here are how the odds stack up in the American League pennant race. Of course, the Astros are the favorites, followed closely by the Yankees, a drop-off to the Blue Jays, who are 7-1. Then we have those Seattle Mariners, who are in that third and final AL wildcard spot, the fourth best odds at 14-1. Cleveland tied for the fifth best price to win the American League pennant with the Tampa Bay Rays, both of those clubs at 17-1. Tampa keeps winning baseball games. They own the top spot in the American League wildcard standings. They have won 6 consecutive games. They have a 1.5 game lead over the Mariners for that top AL wildcard spot. The Blue Jays have won 3 straight. They have the second AL wildcard spot under their control at the moment and the third best price in the American League at 7-1. We preview this weekend of preseason NFL football up next here on the morning after before diving back into Major League Baseball. Stay with us.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play less.
Aaron Rodgers and
the morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Orlando
Fantasy
Magic.
sports
the
today.
Cleveland Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell coast to coast.
That's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Penguins.
time
Kind
decisions.
of bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game
Everybody.
live
I
all
like
access.
I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take a 4.5.
In-game live, prime time.
The PGA champion.
In-game live, overtime.
All done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid. The morning after.
Is this a market that grabs your attention still here as we get ready for the regular season starting in 2 weeks?
I'm taking the points in week 1 with the Rams, so I don't even know if the Bills are going to get to 1-0. But the Bucs start at Dallas, at New Orleans. If they're 4-0 after the first month with all of these players that are coming back from injury and figuring out the new offensive line, then I'll really be impressed. Then I'm going to want to jump on that Bucs best regular season record.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell coast to coast.
Bryce Harper will be activated by the Phillies tomorrow. That just came down. Manager Rob Thompson said that before the game tonight with the Reds. So Bryce back. And look, I mean, what more could he do down in the minors? He had a game with 2 home runs, and then he had a walk-off double last night for them. I mean, what more do you need to see from him down there?
He's still in the minors.
Yeah.
He's playing the Pirates.
The Sports Grid Network.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports with your Sports News Minute. Finally, Massachusetts looks like it's entering the gambling game. The Control Commission, the casino organization that will create all the regulations, is meeting on September 8th to structure the deal. First of all of the stakeholders had a meeting with them this last week, and as you might suspect, move on it yesterday. And some are saying, let's get ready for the football season. Well, yeah, possible, but the date of September 8 is, of course, the evening of the beginning of the NFL season. It ain't happening that quickly. The chair of the group already says, we have 200 regulations to draft, so it's not going to happen overnight. Look, it takes maybe a year, but there's a rush now to get it up and running as quickly as humanly possible. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute.
I am delighted to say once again, Football Friday returns to our lives here on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159, all across the Sports Grid network. From this point until the middle of February, we will have Football Fridays each and every week. We'll touch on other sports, don't get me wrong, but the overlying theme of a Friday on the morning after, football. That's a beautiful thing. Two of the best words in the English language, football and Friday. And on this Football Friday, it's not only the optimism and us looking forward to tomorrow in college football week 0, the start of the 2022 CFB campaign, but also the final week of the NFL preseason, which means that real games are only just under 2 weeks away. 4 games on this Football Friday in the NFL preseason for that week 3 action. One of the good ones that I'm keeping my eye on, Seattle and Dallas. Now the Seahawks, a 7-point favorite on the road in the Star. A touchdown spread in favor of the Seahawks for this game in the preseason. Yeah, it actually makes a ton of sense because the biggest quarterback battle we have seen so far throughout these preseason months and through training camp is in the Pacific Northwest between Drew Lock and Geno Smith. And here's what we know for week 3, the third and final game for Seattle tonight against Dallas. We are going to see Geno Smith get the start, but Drew Lock is going to play most of the game. Drew Lock is going to get most of the action tonight because he missed week 2 for Seattle out due to COVID-19. So Geno Smith was the only quarterback in that competition to get some run last week. So far this preseason, Geno Smith, 20 of 33 as you saw there, 213 yards. Drew Lock in his only preseason action, week number 1, very impressive against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 11 of 15, 102 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Now, head coach Pete Carroll has said it won't just come down to what we've seen in the preseason or what happens in this week 3 finale between these quarterbacks. They are going to take their time to evaluate who is going to be the starter for Seattle this year. But that is why the Seahawks are laying a full touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys. By the way, Dallas, a bad bit of news yesterday. Their left tackle, the 2-time first-team All-Pro in the NFL, Tyron Smith, he is going to be out for an indefinite amount of time, at least until December. A big blow for the reigning NFC East champions in the Dallas Cowboys. As we look at Seattle, though, what we do know for sure is it's a new regime, a new era for the Seahawks because the quarterback of the last decade, Russell Wilson, now plays football in Denver. So whether it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith, this is the win total he will have to deal with for 2022. 5.5, and the over has the juice. I bring in those alternate win totals for a specific historic reason. To go over 6.5 wins, that's plus 130 for Seattle. 9.5, to go over that would be at least 10 wins, that's double digits, is plus 700. Very long odds, but an intriguing plus money number. Yes, it is a new regime. It is a new era, both offensively at that quarterback spot, no longer Russell Wilson, and we have our doubts on either Geno Smith or Drew Lock. And defensively, that Super Bowl winning defense led by the Legion of Boom, they're long gone. Some of the staples from that defense that still remain the past few seasons up in Seattle, like Bobby Wagner, he still plays in the NFC West, but he's down south in Los Angeles for the Rams. However, that 5.5 win total is intriguing for Seattle, and the over should have the juice because the Seahawks have gone over 5.5 wins 12 straight years. And the fewest number of wins in that 12-year span, just 7. And they've won double-digit games 8 of those 12 consecutive seasons going over 5.5 wins. Pete Carroll is still there. There is still talent offensively with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who's ever throwing them the football. And in the running back room with Kenneth Walker III, the rookie out of Michigan State, and Rashad Penny. So just keep an eye on the Seattle Seahawks and at least that win total of 5.5, one of the lowest on the board this season for 2022 across the National Football League. And in the other games that we have tonight in the NFL preseason week number 3, the finale in the Big Easy between the Saints and the Chargers. This one is called Ready for Regular because neither team has really performed all that well in the preseason. Both teams winless so far, both probably having their sights set on the regular season getting underway. And both teams have win totals that are up there. New Orleans, 8.5, a number they have gone over 5 consecutive years. The Chargers at 10, they haven't really gone over. Only a playoff team once in the last 8 seasons, but there is a ton of optimism for Los Angeles this year. The Saints, a 3-point home favorite, a total at 36.5. Both of the 2 games that we had yesterday to start week 3 of the NFL preseason hit the under. Just something to keep in mind as teams might just be looking forward to game week in the regular season on the horizon. Because think about it. When tonight's preseason action is done, they have to make their final roster moves to get down to that final 53-man roster. That deadline is Tuesday afternoon. And then training camp is a thing of the past. The preseason is distant memories at that point. It's game week. It's game preparation for week number 1 of the regular season when games actually count. And for both the Saints and the Chargers that are winless so far, they're already probably thinking about game week preparations. And for the Chargers, at least in the preseason, the defense has not been that great. The worst rushing defense in the league a season ago. The Chargers allowed 29 points to the Rams in their preseason opener, 32 points against the Cowboys last week in week number 2. That's 61 in total. Maybe you look at a Saints team total to round out week 3 of the preseason for both of these teams tonight. The fourth and final game, because we already previewed Buffalo in Carolina, that we need to get to here, New England and Las Vegas. A matchup for Josh McDaniels in his first year as the head man in the desert against his former boss in Bill Belichick. Of course, Josh McDaniels, the longtime offensive coordinator there in Foxborough. So it's McDaniels versus Belichick, the young Padawan against the old master in Belichick. And the Raiders, perfect this preseason, 3-0. And that includes the Hall of Fame game when the Raiders dismantled the Jaguars in Josh McDaniels' hometown of Canton, Ohio. The Raiders a short favorite tonight, laying 1 point in that spread, minus 120 on the money line. But New England has also been very good in the past 2 preseasons. Perfect last year in 2021, 1-1 here to start, scoring 20 points last week in their win over the Carolina Panthers. The total tonight, 37.5. We have a lot of 37.5s on the board this week for the preseason finale. But we use these preseason games to paint the picture of the regular season. It's a market we discussed very briefly yesterday that is very intriguing. Knowing how competitive the AFC West is going to be this year, we expect this to be the most competitive division in all of football. The Raiders made the playoffs a season ago. The Chiefs won the division for the 6th consecutive year, yet both the Chargers and the Broncos also favored right now in their make playoff odds to get in to the AFC playoffs. So on the left, you see the divisional odds to win the AFC West divisional crown. On the right, you'll see their odds to be a wild card team. If you don't win the division, of course, your only hope of making the postseason is in one of those 3 wild card spots in the AFC. What stands out to me more than anything else is the fact that Chiefs are the favorites to win the AFC West for a 7th straight year, yet have the same price to be a wild card team as that of both the Chargers and the Broncos. So at least based on those odds, although the Chiefs are the front runners and the favorites, and rightfully so in my opinion, in the AFC West, there is still some indication from the odds makers that if KC is going to be a playoff team, it might be in that wild card spot, and that both Los Angeles and Denver should challenge for that AFC West title. But again, please keep the Raiders in mind. A postseason team last year that won 10 games and only got better this offseason. Their odds to make the postseason, plus 170. We'll come back on the morning after. Up next with a Major League Baseball breakdown. A focus on the best arms in the game. Up next on this Friday on TMN.
Your heart's racing. The clock's running out. It all comes down to this. We're talking pregame. 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 Get locked in with Game Time Decisions. Your hosts, Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart, will get you ready for game time. Everything you need to know before a game goes off the board, with the bet slips to back it up. Make your best bet with live odds updates, late breaking news, up-to-the-minute injury reports, and real-time analytics from inside the sportsbooks. All the odds, all the action, from sports wagering insiders and industry pros like Donnie Rightside, Cam Lou, Cousin Sal, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, and more. Get the winning edge every weekday afternoon from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 Pacific. It's Game Time Decisions. Only on Sports Grid.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
They don't kick field goals. So now, like, a stupid number like 32 or something should be used because it ain't a multiple of 3 and all these other things that go into making the numbers. Like,
All right.
they ain't ever going to kick a field goal, so 35 and a half is not an option or something. Like, you got to move it quicker. People will figure it out. The rhombuses and the parallelograms will figure it out.
The Bostonian versus the Book. The early line.
Spencer Sanders, first team. Right? Dylan Gabriel, second team. JT Daniels, third team. Yeah, I tell you what, right now, Quinn Ewers is better than all. Donnie, you and I bet Oklahoma State last year over. Don't be surprised if they are favored at Oklahoma State by the time we get to that game. I don't think the schedule is as daunting, and a plus price on 8.5, it does really catch my attention here on Texas.
Only on Sports Grid. Fantasy Sports Today.
The second quarterback basically taken in fantasy drafts. And if the numbers are the same this year, then he's going exactly where he should. So do you anticipate the numbers, Davis, being exactly the same?
I think there's a reasonable chance that he could actually be more effective this season than he was last season. So behind Tyreek Hill, the 3 wide receivers who played the most snaps on the Kansas City Chiefs were Demarcus Robinson.
The Sports Grid Network.
The man that reminds us constantly how impossible it is to be a Major League Baseball batter and try to hit any pitching in the bigs, the pitching ninja. FanDuel's Rob Friedman joins us here on a Friday on the morning after. Rob, thank you for joining us on this Friday. It's been an incredible week in Major League Baseball. We're in the 40-game sprint to the regular season ending. The hunt for October is certainly underway, and we have fans at Yankee Stadium drinking beers out of a hot dog. Innovation at all times in Major League Baseball.
That was disgusting.
Rob, you wouldn't do it? You would not drink your beer with a glizzy?
You know, for money I would, but dude, that just grossed me out. Like, oh my God. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that concept.
I am a believer, Rob, that true genius is never appreciated in its own time. I think that man deserves a Nobel Prize, but we can have that conversation a different day. What we also saw in New York this week, specifically yesterday, was more Jacob deGrom brilliance. 6 innings of work against the Colorado Rockies. Only 1 earned run allowed on just 3 hits to Colorado. Rob, entering the game on FanDuel, the Mets were a minus 450 home favorite. What stood out to you about deGrom's performance yesterday against the Rockies?
You know, it's hard for him to top himself. Like, every game, everybody expects him. Like, getting a walk off him is amazing. And he just continues to be the best pitcher in baseball and one of the best pitchers of all time that I've ever seen. Like, I don't know who's better.
Pedro? Clayton Kershaw in his prime. There are some people, but deGrom is certainly at that level and very much a part of that conversation. As we focus, Rob, on New York arms, Garrett Cole is starting today for the Pinstripes for the Yankees on the road in Oakland. And Rob, the month of August, really since the All-Star break, has been very interesting for the Pinstripes, to say the least. They have struggled, but now they are on a 4-game win streak. And a lot of those struggles, Rob, people have pointed to the pitching coming back down to earth for New York a little bit. With Garrett Cole out there, their ace today in Oakland, what do you want to see out of this Yankees staff the rest of the regular season?
Well, Cole is an elite ace. And, I think people sometimes forget it. He's not Jacob deGrom, but he's pretty darn good. And I expect him to have, down the stretch, he's been there before, expect him to dominate. Like, there is no reason for him to struggle with his stuff.
And they're a minus 245 favorite. Is New York on the road in the Bay today against the A's? It always makes sense. There's that pinstripe price, especially when Garrett Cole gets the start. So the Yankees, Rob, now the second best odds in the American League, plus 210. Behind the betting favorites now in the AL, that would be the Houston Astros, plus 145, the favored price. And Houston, in a matchup today against Baltimore, is sending out Lance McCullers Jr. You highlighted this for us just a few weeks back on the morning after. Rehab starts in minor league baseball, was trending back. This would be something huge for the Stros, in addition to the AL Cy Young odds-on favorite in Justin Verlander in his 38th year on this earth. The 2 starts so far for Lance McCullers Jr., Rob. What have you seen?
He's still he's struggling to get back to where he was, but his stuff is there. And his changeup is, I forgot how filthy that was. And he threw some nasty ones last time out, but also his slider, it's insane. Like, he's a legit ace, and people forget how good he is. Adding him back to that already dominant staff. And you're right, Justin Verlander has been outstanding. I mean, he's 90 something years. No, he's not. But he's hitting 99 miles an hour in games. Like, wow. It's incredible. And his command is outstanding. He's pitching as well as he's ever pitched. And you add, under the radar guy, like Javier is fantastic. Garcia is fantastic. And then McCullers on top of that, that's a tough matchup for anybody.
Justin Verlander, just earlier this week, again, he is 38 years old, but it feels like he's been in Major League Baseball for 90 years. It's his 18th season in Major League Baseball. He had 6 innings of no-hit work against the Minnesota Twins with 10 strikeouts. He gets pulled from the game. He's like, yeah, it's all good. I've done this enough. I'm just focused on October baseball at that point. And Rob, we showed those American League pennant odds, and the Astros are the favorites at plus 145. Do you think Houston is the rightful favorite, and that anything that happens in the American League runs through Houston, Texas?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, I think the Astros should be the favorites. Not to say that they're prohibitive favorites. I mean, I would say the Yankees would have a shot. And heck, even the Guardians are playing well, and they've surprised folks. So, there's a lot of folks that can contend with them. I think the Rays are a solid team as well. Blue Jays, no doubt they're the favorite. But it's not like you got to hand them the crown or anything. But I will tell you, like Verlander, every time out, it feels like he's got a no-hitter through 5 or a no-hitter through 6 or whatever it is. And he's just bored with it. Like, that's what he does. He's a no-hit dude.
Rob, as we flip it back over to the National League, at the trade deadline, nobody was more optimistic feeling than the San Diego Padres. They get Juan Soto. Fernando Tatis Jr. on his way back as well. Josh Hader, one of the best closers in all of baseball, now a member of the Padres. It hasn't been so great on the diamond. The Padres, since the Juan Soto trade at the trade deadline, well below 500. They have lost 2 straight games, but with Joe Musgrove on the mound today in Kansas City, a minus 188 favorite in Kauffman. Rob, how do you evaluate the Padres at this time in the final couple of weeks, at least, of this regular season in Major League Baseball?
They're a really tough team to read. They're up and down, just like their starting pitching. Like, there are times where Blake Snell is, legit one of the top pitchers on earth with his arsenal. And then there are times where it goes downhill for him. Very inconsistent, kind of like the team. Musgrove can absolutely beat anybody. You would love him on the bump against anybody in the major leagues. Was a Cy Young contender, and but again, there's a little bit of that going on, and it's tough for the team to find consistency to me.
And right now, the Dodgers, the favorites in the National League, plus 140, over $1 now in front of the New York Mets. But when Jacob deGrom looks like he did yesterday, maybe there's some value on the Amazons. The Braves, the third best price. Atlanta, Rob, keeps winning baseball games. They have won 14 of their last 16, and they have a weekend series against those St. Louis Cardinals, who are 12-1, tied alongside the San Diego Padres. Rob, as you were to rank the National League right now, the Dodgers probably at the top, but who do you think are true contenders to maybe knock off LA?
I mean, either the Braves or the Mets absolutely could do it. The Braves, their lineup wears down pitching, and I've seen this over and over again, where they're up against top guys, and they look bad for the first few innings, but they eventually get to them. They're just really good approaches at the plate. Lots of young energy on the team. I like them a lot. And then the Mets, like, if you're going against their top guys, it's hard to pick against them. Then again, the Dodgers just got what? They got Dustin May back, who is arguably the filthiest pitcher in baseball. And I will say that, like, his stuff, he may not be the best pitcher in baseball, but he may be the filthiest pitcher in baseball. And then you had Gratterall and Trinan back to an already dominant team. That's trouble.
It will be a very different Dodgers starting lineup, though, in terms of that starting staff in this postseason, as we have seen in years past. No Walker Buehler, just had Tommy John surgery. Clayton Kershaw dealing with injuries. It will be guys like Tony Gonsolin, who has been sensational this year, the Catman, and Tyler Anderson leading the way with Dustin May for the Dodgers this postseason. For the Braves, Rob, it's a guy you've been all over all season long. Spencer Strider. He gets the start today in St. Louis, is the favorite right now at minus 140 to win National League Rookie of the Year. His Braves teammate in Michael Harris also in minus money at minus 105. What do you expect for Spencer Strider today in his start against the Redbirds, who have been playing very good baseball as of late?
Yeah, Strider is always must watch for me and probably for anybody in baseball. Dude just lights up the radar gun, has command of his pitches, challenges folks. He's like a gunslinger out there. Like, I love watching the dude pitch. Not a big dude, but he comes at you, and I look for a lot of Ks out of Spencer.
Many ways to attack the Major League Baseball slate on this Friday, as brought to you by FanDuel's pitching ninja, Rob Friedman, including Spencer Strider, to have 8 or more strikeouts against the Cardinals. Wrap that up into a parlay, Rob. Break it down for us, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, absolutely. So today I have Chris Bassett for 6 or more Ks, and he's been pitching well, and I love him in competitive situations like this where they're trying to turn it on down the stretch. I have Spencer Strider for 8 or more Ks. And then Reed Detmers, who has been coming on of late ever since refiguring out his slider. He's been pretty dominant, and I like him for 6 or more Ks. So parlay that, and that's what I got today.
Rob, I expect to see a lot of videos then of these 3 gentlemen on the bump today with some nasty stuff, adding up a ton of strikeouts. Is that your promise for us here on this Friday?
I can't promise it, but I can't not promise it. So yeah, we're going to absolutely do that. Absolutely. Totally. Lots of Strider too, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so. If that parlay adds up, listen, we will be seeing a lot of videos for sure. And by the way, Chris Bassett and the Mets, minus 450 against the Rockies yesterday at home. They're minus 350 today. Rob Friedman, the pitching ninja from FanDuel, joining us here on the morning after. Rob, as always, thank you for the MLB breakdown.
Thanks, Ben.
On this Football Friday, we go back to college football. Sports Grid's college football analyst, Joe Lisi, joins us next. We run through the Week 0 slate in CFB. Stay here.
Might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, Learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I'm not buying you dinner because I'm wrong. I'm buying you dinner because you're in town, and it's a nice thing for a friend to do to another friend. Just buy them dinner.
No, I have to pick up my phone and hold it right now because it's buzzing nonstop because you're talking.
Well, that's what I do, so that's kind of my thing. It's kind of hard to stop me from talking. Kind of hard to stop me from talking. People have tried for 45 years and it hasn't really worked yet. So,
The Bostonian versus the Book. Pharrell, coast to coast.
Bryce Harper will be activated by the Phillies tomorrow. That just came down. Manager Rob Thompson said that before the game tonight with the Reds. So Bryce back. And look, I mean, what more could he do down in the minors? He had a game with 2 home runs, and then he had a walk-off double last night for them. I mean, what more do you need to see from him down there?
He's still in the minors.
Yeah.
He's playing the Pirates.
The Sports Grid Network. Fantasy Sports Today.
And Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who had 400 receiving yards last year, 3 touchdowns, and his ADP is 148. He's the 53rd wide receiver taken. And look, I understand your commentary about Rodgers, and if he likes you, he throws to you, and if he doesn't, then he just doesn't. But, I mean, he had the chance in Green Bay for several years and was a big disappointment. I'm not going to be in on this player.
The Sports Grid Network. The early line.
Bryce Young, A+ 400, quarterback. How about Caleb Williams goes out to USC from Oklahoma, 6-1. Guess what? He's a quarterback. DJ Uiagalelei, how about that? 25-1, quarterback from Clemson. Oh no, look at this. Will Anderson, a defensive end in college football for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It seems like if anybody's going to win a Heisman Trophy outside the quarterback, it has to apparently come from Alabama.
Only on Sports Grid.
Just about 24 hours away from the start of the 2022 college football season. And if you think I, Ben Stevens, the host of The Morning After, live here on this Football Friday on Sports Grid, loves college football, let me present you the mastermind of the college football pigskin, my co-host each and every day on Football Full Circle on Sports Grid Radio. One of my 2 co-hosts coming tomorrow for College Football Today, our newly revamped college football pregame show. Joe Lisi joins us here on The Morning After. Joe and I are going to run through the biggest games of the Week 0 slate in college football. Joe Lisi, happy college football start eve to you. We are very glad to have you here on The Morning After.
Oh, we finally made it, Ben. This is it. The 2022 season is here. We're a day away. You mentioned college football today. The new show starts. I can't wait tomorrow morning from 9 to 12. And this is what it's all about, baby. Breaking down the games, the calm before the storm. We wet the palate a little bit this weekend to get ready for Labor Day weekend with all the slate from Friday, Thursday, straight through Monday night. So it doesn't get better than this.
Joe Lisi, myself, Kevin Walsh, the newly revamped College Football Today each and every Saturday this fall, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, bringing you up until noon before kickoff tomorrow. And the first game up is actually Austin Peay in Western Kentucky, but only a half an hour after that, Joe, in Dublin, all eyes on Ireland, Nebraska, and Northwestern in a Big Ten opener out there across the Emerald Isle. And we have seen tons of movement in this number this morning. It was 13.5 just yesterday in favor of Nebraska, down by 2 points. The Huskers remain the favorite, Joe, but at only 11.5 for that point spread. What do you make of this movement on the eve of the opener in Dublin?
It's amazing, right? Actually, on the West Coast, it got up to 14, and then they hammered it down late last night when I was on air to around 12.5, and now we see it right here on FanDuel at 11.5 in terms of this matchup. And we know about Nebraska dominating them in that game in Lincoln, 56-7, 427 rushing yards. But we talk about it all off season, Ben. You know, to take Nebraska minus double digits, you really need everything to go your way early and often in the first quarter and second quarter. And I can't take that bet. It could only go downhill if Northwestern jumps up early, let's say 3-0 or even 10-3 in the second quarter. You're not going to get Nebraska at minus 13.5 or even minus 11.5. It might be under that key number of 7. So I would wait. I'm already sitting on a Northwestern plus 13.5 ticket. And even though they got blown out last year, I think Pat Fitzgerald has this team motivated. Ryan Helinski is an experienced quarterback, so hopefully we'll get a better defensive effort on a neutral field.
The Cornhuskers just 3-4, both straight up and against the spread when booked as a favorite last year. But in that game, Lisi, against Northwestern in Lincoln, Nebraska won 56-7, easily covering as an 11-point home favorite, mainly because they ran all over Northwestern's bad run defense last year to the tune of 427 yards. I love that we have player props available for College Football Week 0, including that rushing yards number for Nebraska's Ramir Johnson, about to embark on his sophomore campaign in Lincoln. Lisi, what's a key matchup you're paying attention to the most between the Huskers and the Cats for tomorrow?
Yeah, well, we talk about how bad the rush defense was of Northwestern last year, right? Keep in mind they allowed 7 of 12 opponents to rush for over 200 yards. They were 0-7 in those ball games, Ben, and lost by an average margin of defeat of 26.7 points per game. But that was last year under Scott Frost's offense. With Mark Whipple, I expect them to be more pass-oriented, more pass-heavy to get Casey Thompson and their quarterback and their wide receivers more involved in the offense. So when you look at Ramir Johnson right now in terms of 67.5, I talked about it yesterday with you. I think he goes under that matchup or under that number because I think they're going to try and get more of a passing game going, not just this game in game 1, but throughout the regular season to compete for a Big Ten championship and a Big Ten title. This team needs to get over 6 wins this year, in my opinion, for Scott Frost to keep his job. So that's the matchup I'm keeping an eye out on.
I think it's a great point. Year number 5 of Scott Frost, but the first year with his offensive coordinator as Mark Whipple. Ramir Johnson last year against Northwestern, 74 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. We'll pay attention to it all for Nebraska and Northwestern tomorrow in Dublin. But it's not the only great game we have on the Week 0 slate. You have to be a true college football fan to get excited by UConn and Utah State, but Joe Lisi and I are. Nearly a 4-touchdown spread, Lisi, in favor of the Aggies, a team that we are both high on to compete for a Mountain West championship for a second straight year. But how do you feel about Utah State's opener tomorrow against UConn? That line working in favor of the Huskies just barely, now at 26.5.
Yeah, I took a broad approach with this game. Now, Jim Mora Jr. takes over for UConn. You know about his success in the early part of his tenure at UCLA. Took Brett Hundley and those teams to 10-3 overall records before they regressed. But you look at UConn last year, one of the worst statistical defenses in terms of FBS, giving up well over 30 points per game. And Utah State, one of the best road teams last year, where Blake Anderson knocked off Oregon State in the bowl game. But I look at this game, and Utah State on paper is clearly the best team in this matchup with Logan Bonner at the helm. They have 7 starters on offense, 8 coming back on defense. But the key to me is Utah State has a week 1 matchup on the road in Tuscaloosa against the top-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. They're already 39.5-point underdogs in that battle. I don't know if they show all of it in terms of week 0 against UConn. There's been a lot of JUCO transfers that have come in for UConn, supposedly, that should elevate this defense to be a little bit better than where they were last year. I took UConn plus the 27.5 in a potential look-ahead spot for Utah State. It's very rare you say a look-ahead for a team week 1 or week 0, but when you have Alabama on deck, I think you're always looking over your shoulder.
39.5 for that spread between the Aggies and the Tide next week in Tuscaloosa, but Utah State trying to take care of business at least with an outright win against UConn this week. The total at 58.5, as Lisi mentioned. Connecticut last year, the 7th worst scoring defense in all of college football. So, Lisi, we have a Big Ten opener in Ireland, but it's not the only conference clash we have across the slate. A couple in CUSA, a Conference USA clash between Florida Atlantic and Charlotte. Right now, FAU more than a touchdown favorite at home, laying 7 and a hook. That total up there relatively at 60.5. What's your approach for this game between FAU and Charlotte?
Yeah, well, this is one game I really like, and I advise everybody to keep an eye out for the weather. There's scattered thunderstorms in terms of Boca all day on Saturday. Right in game time, it's about 50%. Does that affect the passing attack of both N'Kosi Perry and Chris Reynolds, two of the top quarterbacks in the conference? But FAU dominated this ball game last year. I think this is a revenge spot for Will Healy and the 49ers. I like Chris Reynolds. He's an accurate quarterback. 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions last year, has his 2 big play wide receivers that return that combined for $113 receptions, over 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. And there is inexperience in the secondary for FAU. They're starting a sophomore and a redshirt freshman. That's always a cause of concern. Might be a wet track, but in a revenge spot, I got to take the 49ers here. I like Charlotte potentially to win this ball game outright as well. Like them plus the 7.5 and plus 240.
Plus 240 on that money line for Charlotte. A bold pick by Joe Lisi, but that is what he does. And his favorite setting in all of college football, at least one of them, the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. We are expecting a sold-out crowd for another Conference USA collision between UTEP and North Texas. And Lisi, as you go through the Week 0 slate, at least by the spread, this is expected to be the most competitive game. The Mean Green, only a 1.5 favorite on the road against Texas El Paso. That total at 54.5. The Sun Bowl on a beautiful Saturday night in late August. How do you think that home field advantage comes into play tomorrow for UTEP?
Well, it's the first sellout, I think, or the largest crowd since the 2014 Sun Bowl between Arizona State and Duke. And Duke wound up covering that ball game as a 7.5, 8-point underdog. I was on the Duke Blue Devils that day. I'll tell you, you know how I feel about the Sun Bowl, Ben. If I'm a 12-0 coach and I win my championship game and they say you're going to the college football playoff, no. I'm going to the rolling hills of Texas El Paso. I'm taking my team to the Sun Bowl. Absolutely love the atmosphere. This is an intriguing game because you have 2 good quarterbacks, Gavin Hardiston for UTEP and Dana Dimmel's crew, right? And you have Austin Arn, who's 29 years old, that played professional baseball. And North Texas got this victory last year, 20-17. I think North Texas's defense is a little bit better. I like them better in the secondary in this matchup, even though they're going on the road. We've seen a lot of fluctuation from 1.5 to pick back up to 1.5. A lot of pressure on UTEP. I'm going to take the road team in North Texas, but I think this could be a shootout, believe it or not, even though it was an under last year. I'm going over the 54.5 on a fast track Saturday night in Texas.
You know when I call Joe Lisi the mastermind of the college football pigskin? Yeah, it's because he brings up things like the 2014 Sun Bowl between ASU and Duke and what the spread was and who covered and what his wager was for that day. This guy lives and breathes college football, and we appreciate his expertise here. And I can guarantee you one more thing about our college football mastermind, that Joe Lisi will be awake at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow to take in the final game of Week 0. Vanderbilt off the mainland into the Hawaiian Islands against Hawaii. And Vandy, Joe, has seen this spread work very much in its favor, now nearly at double digits. The Commodores laying 9.5 on the road in Hawaii. Is that spread too large in favor of Vanderbilt?
I don't think it is. Let's just throw a couple of factors. In terms of home field advantage, it's only about 9,000 fans in terms of Hawaii. So keep that in mind. Vanderbilt got there Sunday night. And Vandy, we hear about how Hawaii on a week one matchup, they're 11-1 against the number, and that's true. But Vandy did cover 4 straight at the end of the year to Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Kentucky, and they put up points on those defenses. I like Vanderbilt here. Their defense came around in the second portion of the year under Clark Lee. I think this team is going to be motivated. They know they can win this matchup. Michael Wright is a dual threat type of quarterback. Keep an eye out for Vanderbilt because I'm telling you, I think they could be a 3 or a 4 win football team. They win this ball game by double digits. They win it in the interior. Only one starter back for Hawaii.
The Commodores just 2 wins this season ago, but both Joe Lisi and I brave enough to think Vandy will get to 3, the over of their win total at 2.5. So the only number I'm really concerned about, Joe, for that game in Hawaii, minus 360 for the Commodores on that money line. But Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, the first edition of the newly revamped with 3 hosts in the seat, College Football Today. Joe Lisi, myself, and old K-Dubs, Kevin Walsh. CFT Lisi, each and every Saturday this fall, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. How juiced up are you?
Oh, I might not sleep. I might be pulling an all-nighter, Ben, tomorrow. We'll see how this goes. And I'll tell you, I'll be up all night Saturday night watching these games.
The most shocking thing that Joe Lisi told to me today, not North Texas on the road, covering as a 1.5-point favorite in the Sun Bowl, he ran out of coffee at the Lisi residence. This guy drinks 2 pots a day, and it's the eve of college football. That's our focus for the best bet. Up next to round out the morning after.
If you want to pick like a pro, you need to be in the know. The future of sports gaming is now, and we take you inside the lines, breaking down all the action and what it means for your bet slip. Turn down the game and tune into Sports Grid Radio. Other networks talk sports talk, but we walk the walk, right up to the window. Sports Grid Radio.
Listen free on the Sports Grid Radio app, iHeart, or TuneIn, or catch us on Sirius XM Sports Grid Channel 159.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour Champion, 2017 World Number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
Pharrell, coast to coast.
What's in store for him, I think, is going to be a lot of turning around and handing the ball off. When you look at Luke Getsy's offense, Justin Fields making his first ever start in the NFL, got sacked 9 times. Right. And Matt Nagy didn't bother letting his running backs, chip blockers or take on pass rush responsibilities. And that is so irresponsible. And I think Fields will benefit from having a coaching staff that's a little smarter about how to do it.
The Sports Grid Network. The Bostonian versus the Book.
It's not even roll call Friday, and the boys are all chiming in. 11 games.
Fine.
11 games.
It's fine. That's an appeal. Language matters. You guys all would fail law school.
What law school did you go to again?
I didn't need to. My father went to Boston College of Law. So, my father's a lawyer.
So, I know a lot of people whose fathers or lawyers are in jail.
The Bostonian versus the Book. Fantasy sports today.
The second quarterback basically taken in fantasy drafts. And if the numbers are the same this year, then he's going exactly where he should. So do you anticipate the numbers, Davis, being exactly the same?
I think there's a reasonable chance that he could actually be more effective this season than he was last season. So behind Tyreek Hill, the 3 wide receivers who played the most snaps on the Kansas City Chiefs were Demarcus Robinson.
The Sports Grid Network. The early line.
No exact time set on how long he will be out, but it appears to be at least months of this upcoming season, which is, again, probably at least 8 games? for Tyron Smith?
Yeah, reading through the practice reports, it looks like it was devastating news right away off the top, and then you started to get that good feel like, you know what, he avoided major disaster, but really did he?
Only on Sports Grid.
I can hardly contain my excitement as we round out these 2 hours together here on the first Football Friday on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sirius XM channel 159, the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM, all across the Spiz Grizz network. That's Sports Grid. I am Ben Stevens. Thank you for joining us here on this Football Friday, the final day of the college football offseason. So before we round out this show, before we round out this week on the morning after, sending you into Saturday, week 0 of the 2022 college football season that officially kicks off the new year, we give you a best bet, a college football best bet. Before we say farewell and before we say goodbye, it's time for that CFB best bet. It is time for bye, bye, bye. And you know I am only going one place. I lived and worked in Omaha, Nebraska to start off my professional career for 2 years. I covered the Nebraska Cornhuskers each and every day. Some people call me Big Ten Ben. So, of course, my focus is on that Big Ten opener in Ireland, in Dublin, at Aviva Stadium between the Wildcats and the Cornhuskers. And this is my specific focus, that first half total. It's at 26.5. For the game overall, it's 50 in a hook. You heard from Connor Happer earlier in this show. He expects Nebraska, under first-year offensive coordinator Mark Whipple, to maybe take a conservative approach early on, which would make sense given the trends the Huskers struggled to score last year in the first half, only averaging just a tick above 12 points per game in those opening 2 quarters. Northwestern, even worse than that, averaging just 7.5 points per game in the first half, the 4th worst scoring offense in the first half in the country. We go under 26.5 for that first half total to start college football week 0. Enjoy the Saturday slate. I am Ben Stevens. This has been the morning after. After it's all done, have a great weekend. We'll talk on Monday.